Good morning, all of you. And thanks for those who could make it to this session. And a very warm welcome to the first India webinar chapter for AWIP, Market Effects and Network Places. Can you people hear me? Okay, cool. I take that as a yes. Firstly, I would appreciate all of you for joining this amidst your new normal and taking time out for your learning and career advancement. On the similar line, I would like to go through what is the AWIP's mission and why are we doing this. AWIP mission is to empower tech leaders through equality and opportunity in the career advancement, not only for women but for men as well. At the same time, India chapter kicked up its Chennai chapter in February. On those lines, in Q2, we decided to go online and do webinars, given the fact and the chaos that we have and the new nuances in the life that we are seeing right now, an unprecedented time. And first in the chapter is market places and network effects. There are more to come in pipeline with a lot of exciting learning for you people. So stay hooked. On this note, I introduce myself as the moderator for this webinar, Manali Oval, working with PayPal and a core member of AWIP. And I take this opportunity to welcome our speaker, Pamit D. Anand, who is a veteran and a stalwart in the product industry and brings with him abundance of experience on the marketplaces and its network effects. He has worked with giants like Times and Shadi.com, which appears to be the consumer-facing products. Without much ado, I would like Pamit to take over the webinar session and bring into the flavors of marketplaces and network effects and introduce himself in more precisely in his own words. Pamit, the webinar is all yours. Thank you.
I'm currently with Magic Bricks, which is a Times Group company. And I was previously with Shadi.com. The topic for today, which is marketplaces and network effects, is it's an interesting product concept. What I'll try and do today is I'll try and address how marketplaces have kind of evolved over time, and what product managers should be thinking about in order to build network effects into their products. As product people, a lot of us. So I'll continue with my slides, and let's take it from there. Try to visualize a very basic two-way marketplace, which essentially is between buyers and sellers transacting on a platform like, let's say, an Amazon or an eBay, right? To begin with, I am using the example of eBay. This is circa somewhere around 2000, which was one of the early marketplaces, and Amazon. And at that stage, Amazon was essentially positioning itself as or in fact, it was focused on the retail book market. So if I were to use that example, the difference between a marketplace and a retailer is that marketplaces have by default a moat, and that moat is the network effect. Marketplaces scale a lot better, and we will talk about the slightly more modern definition of marketplaces being. And then because you have these two, you have much better margins. Now this is in comparison to standard retail, both offline as well as online retail. Now online retail is what Amazon had tried to be, and maybe, let's say, in today's contemporary example, if you were to say what sometimes maybe a Big Bazaar or these single brand retail outlets are in comparison to larger platform marketplaces. So at that stage, early in the game, in around 2000s, eBay was actually the early marketplace. Amazon was not. And by 2015, of course, Amazon as a marketplace was growing. It was a $83 billion GMV, revenue about under $9 billion, massive cash flows, and continued to grow. Now, the reason I'm using this is that this is the early evolution stage of marketplace businesses. Another example from the slightly more Indian setup is the business that I represent, Shadi.com. It's also kind of a marketplace where you have eligible boys and eligible girls joining, and the one characteristic that you'll find which is common between these kinds of businesses is that with the addition of every additional user, there's another set of users that are benefiting. Now, in the case of more pure play e-commerce setup, you'll find that this is between buyers and sellers. But let's say for a shadi, it's between boys and girls. So to that effect, network effects in marketplaces are relatively weaker as compared to one-sided network effects. What just to give you an example, what I mean by a one-sided network effect is what you would call a Facebook, right? Where everybody that is joining the network is essentially making the same nature of transaction. They're all consuming content, information, and media. And the addition of every person to the network benefits absolutely 100% of the network. Now, that's not true for a business like Shadi, or even for an Amazon or an eBay, because there are buyers, and the addition of new buyers doesn't necessarily benefit other buyers, unless you make a very indirect kind of a case for it. Another example of a marketplace business, which I actually was very surprised that it did well when Airbnb came about. So if you look at your screens, I'm talking about a marketplace between hosts and guests. And when this particular product model was created, I remember telling one of my friends that it's impossible to work. One can't really imagine a stranger in their house, or me going and living in another stranger's house just to get a flavor of the culture of that city or whatever. But it's done well, and not only have they managed to get lots and lots of hosts, they're pretty much running at about 60-70% capacity for most of their geographies. I think India is a little on the lower side, but also doing very well. Again, these are very simple examples of how marketplaces tend to build up network effects, which then create a kind of an entry barrier and a moat for other businesses or other new products to try and overtake. Same with Shadi. It's easy to conceptualize a new matchmaking, matrimonial dating platform in India because there is no cost of goods sold. So you're not really making any major capex investments. But what you have to solve for is the network effect. You are going to struggle to get females on the platform. And if you don't have the females on the platform, you won't get the guys to come to the platform. And that's how that particular flywheel network rotates. So developing the momentum of within the network model is very important for marketplaces. I very quickly summarized based on what Ben Horowitz explains marketplace business models. He says that marketplaces typically demonstrate network effects. They have a community, like I was mentioning earlier, that does most of the work. And there are absolutely no physical constraints to growth. Now, this is where marketplaces in the digital era, or what I call marketplace 1.0, are different from marketplaces in the more physical world, because there are physical constraints to growth. In the case of a marketplace before the digital era would have been, let's say, a supermarket or a hypermarket or even a large grocery store. All these kinds of setups, they were very constrained by inventory stocking capabilities. So that has completely gone away with a marketplace setup like that of Amazon. And I'll come back to the Amazon example shortly, because while it started off almost on the wrong foot, if I were to use that term, as a retailer, it immediately realized the importance of network effects and kind of figured out what eBay was doing better than it and did a much better job of understanding network effects. So this is, let's call it Marketplace 1.0, and this is the flywheel that Amazon ended up creating. Now, this is somewhere, there's a anecdote about how Bezos made this on a handkerchief, and he kind of, or a paper napkin, he kind of drew this up, and he said that, this is what we need to do. This is the value we need to create. But if you look at it in simple terms, it's basically a buyer side and a seller side, right? So it's the same. It's the same two circles, that those very simple two circles that you were looking at. But what he has also done is he's broken it further down. So, for example, on the seller side, he's broken it down to seller and selection. Now, what he means by that, or what Amazon means by that, is that not only is it important to get many sellers, it's also important to get a lot of inventory from that sellers on your platform. So, let's say, for example, a football manufacturing company. They have all sizes and shapes of footballs. Amazon would want them to actually list all their inventory. Now, why is that important? Because that gives consumer value in the form of selection, and that, I don't know if you remember the Amazon brand campaign where they said "Aur dikhao." This is an India campaign, and they said, you get to see as much as you want. So selection is a very compelling network node, which drives customer experience, which in turn, and what he basically means by customer experience is good prices and good selection, right? Now, because of this, the fact that there's so much of choice and there is price competitiveness, there's a lot of traffic that started coming to platform. And because there's a lot of traffic, there's a lot of sellers that came. So this virtuous circle started kind of delivering value. Now, from a product organization point of view, we kind of started setting up product managers and product leaders for each of these nodes. And they kind of started monitoring what I would call key metrics, product metrics for selection, customer experience, traffic, and service. As a result of this inner wheel of Amazon, they ended up getting the benefit of lower cost structures, because obviously when all the sellers are on Amazon, they're going to start competing to get the traffic to transact with them. So what the prices that we started seeing on Amazon started becoming gold standard. And so that's how the outer pinion wheel started driving the inner wheel, which then started creating cost efficiencies, margins, and modes all together. Now, if you ask me, Amazon's pivot towards third-party business started fairly early. So while I started with the example of how eBay was ahead in the race earlier, Amazon started making that shift very consciously, because they actually, and this is my own assessment, they actually product managed their way to it, which means they actually decided that they're going to focus on each element of this flywheel rather than just looking at it as two big nodes. They started identifying sub nodes within those nodes and creating momentum within the flywheel. This slide that you see now, it is a 2015 snapshot of how their third-party business overtook their core business, their core first-party business, both in terms of margins as well as GMV. So that's Marketplace 1.0. So everything we've discussed so far is just the early marketplaces that kind of develop. Now, with 2.0, we have to get used to a little bit of fancy phraseology, disrupting the disruptor. But the premise of Marketplace 2.0 is, according to most people, like, and I follow Ben Horowitz and some of these Western techies on this. The premise is that it's because of the rise of the smartphone. Now, what happens with the rise of the smartphone and the fact that there's this huge mobile workforce that is used for downloading apps and actually interacting with it on the go, and the fact that the data, especially in countries like India, started becoming so cheap, is that you have a computing device which is mobile. Now, in order to understand Market 2.0, I'll quickly just take you back to 2005. This is what Craigslist used to look like in 2005. Basically, one of the worst things about uh, a technology product is if you don't keep up with the times in terms of design and technology itself. And Craigslist is kind of a good example for that. You look at all these blue links where uh, you expect the user to figure out what each of these things will give you, and there's no real user experience at all. Now, this is also because of the kind of people that Craigslist, the founders are very unique kind of individuals. They're very social activist kinds, and they completely refuse to move ahead with times. Fairly anti-capitalist kind of people. Now they refuse to really innovate. Now this is how it looked in 2005, and then 2015. The only thing that has really changed is the hardware. MacBook Air on the side. So what's ended up happening in 1.0 is there's been a complete hollowing from within Craigslist's offerings. There were products that were developed smartly tailored towards very, very specific needs. So, for example, if you look at the personal space, earlier Craigslist was kind of like a one place where you could find partners as well, dates. Then obviously OkCupid, Match, and eHarmony happened. Similarly, you find that with jobs, Indeed and Honor and all of those started coming and taking away Craigslist business. So what Craigslist did to the print industry, which was, by the way, print suffered about 2/3 of their classifieds business completely was moved away to Craigslist. Because they didn't keep up with the times, there were specialized products that were developed, which kind of hollowed out Craigslist. So, as a model, as a product model, marketplaces are considered superior because they give you identity and reputation. These are the top two things that I would call out. What I mean by identity is that you could be a seller who can develop an identity on a platform like Amazon, which is unique to your capabilities and what you bring. Now, pretty much 2.0 again. So after you've seen what happened in 1.0, which was a hollowing out of Craigslist.
Hey, Pamit or Monali here. Okay, just a curious question out of curiosity. Sorry to pause you. Can you just tell us how network effect is different from the viral effect? Just for the audience curiosity or my curiosity.
How network effects is different from virality? It's a good question. Virality drives acquisition. So if you are, there are certain businesses that are good at driving virality just because of the nature of the category there. For example, Netflix has a certain inbuilt virality to it. Because if you watch a good film on Netflix, you will tell two people about it. It doesn't have great network effects. It means that just because there are certain films on Netflix doesn't mean that you're going to keep driving traffic. It's mainly because that same film may be available on Star Movies as well. So virality is something that essentially is an acquisition driver. It isn't a product model, right? There are ways of measuring virality as well. I think it's called the K coefficient, for example, where if whatever you want to promote, let's say it's a registration link or a lead layer or whatever, if it is being promoted at a rate of greater than 1.0, that means it's gone viral. That's how you measure it. Network effects to that extent are in, are part of a marketplace model. They're a product model company, which means your participants are actually driving each other to more and more participate in that same product and thereby creating value. So I'll give you one quick example of the oldest form of network effects. English language is a very good example, right? Because people started speaking English more and more in the Commonwealth countries and wherever the British took it, it became something that has now become the business language of the world. Right? Currency is another example. Money is another example. And because you're using the US dollar, I'm speaking about in terms of large transactions or international transactions. The US dollar has the network effects to sustain itself, and therefore it's always in demand. And another example you could use is religion, belief. Right? If everyone believes in a certain mythology associated with religion, it kind of has a network effect because that everyone is participating and adding to the stories of the mythology. I can also think of examples around telephone, right? Mobile telephones, because everyone's participating in smartphones and because everyone has a handset, there are others, who can not only reach out to them, but can also be reached out to. So that's one way of looking at it.
Mm-hmm. Right. So I mean, thank you for clarifying. How network effects and viral effects are of things, and putting on a wonderful example of Netflix. On the other hand, when we talk about network effects, are there, if we want to, dive deeper, are there any different type of network effects that you would like to, share your thoughts on?
Yeah, so there are direct and indirect. Like a direct network effect is like the one I spoke about in terms of Facebook. Right? Everyone's doing the same thing on Facebook. The nature of the transaction is that of exchanging content and information. That's a much stronger network effect. The marketplaces actually have, in comparison to that, a slightly weaker network effect because every participant is not necessarily adding value to the entire network. It could be adding value to 50% of the network because the other half doesn't care. Again, shadi.com comes to mind. It's a slightly weaker network effect. And therefore, it's called a two-sided market network effect. So these are the two primary types.
Good, Pamit. I mean, I got it.
Right. So, and at the end of the 2.0 era, this is pretty much my last slide, and we can start getting into questions and a bit of a conversation because that would be a lot more fun. So by the end of 2.0, let's call it around 2012, 14ish, where apps became normal. The mobile workforce started participating, which is a large part of the population across the globe, especially India and South Asia, where people were now, getting jobs assigned. So I don't know if you guys have heard of the term gig economy or shared economy. So Uber, for example, came about only because you had the computational evolution of a smartphone. Similarly, with Swiggy, you have people who can deliver stuff because they're mobile and they can take orders one after the other without having to go back to base, which would have been the case earlier, or maybe they would have had to do it through telephones. So this evolution is what I call marketplace 2.0. This is again, I'm going by what some of the gurus in this space talk about, Ben Horowitz. And the exciting part is going to be what's going to happen next. Now, obviously, we're living in a world where social distancing and all of this is going to be here for a while. So, how we as product people solve those problems is going to be the next big leg. I do know for a fact that a lot of the cutting edge technologists have been talking about how this is also going to be AI ML led. A lot of the 3.0 leg is going to be a lot more about predicting consumers' requirement. But I personally am a little more cynical about that being the next big leg. I don't think that's how marketplaces will necessarily differentiate from each other or make the next big jump in growth. Mainly because AI and ML, while it's useful for predictive analysis and all of that, they solve very narrow and what we call narrow AI, very close set deterministic probability based problems. So that doesn't really translate well to a marketplace change in trajectory. Although I could be wrong. All right, so that's pretty much it. I'm ending with a quote from Elon Musk. Talks about how the singularity is going to be the next frontier. The concept of singularity is a whole topic in itself. But it essentially talks about how we reach an event horizon where the rate of change in consumer transactions will be so fast that there'll be it'll be impossible to know how fast we're going to kind of have our new products developed. So product development itself is going to be automated. But while I end with that quote, I'm a lot more cynical about that happening in the mainstream. Right, that's it. All yours. Oh, I can see a good question. Any specific examples from Shadi which bought network effects? Okay, I can discuss a few without giving out the secret sauce. So the question is, at Shadi, see, we had a very clear requirement, which was to match girls with guys. And our constraint used to be that we needed more and more females. Because when you have more females, the guys tend to come back. Now, this is social reality in terms of how matchmaking happens. So I'm saying this with that caveat. So we super optimized our product engine, making sure that females are acquired. So I'll give you an example. We spent a lot more marketing dollar, for example, in acquiring females. We spend a lot more to acquire females to our network because the fact that a female joins means that the guys will join. And they don't. It's not necessarily 1:1. It's just the fact that if you see a lot more profiles, female profiles on Shadi versus, let's say, another competitor like Bharat Matrimony, then you are more likely to transact with Shadi. So we focused a lot on female acquisition as part of our network optimization program. Apart from that, we also made it a lot more high friction for the males. So it's much harder, for example, to convince Shadi technology if you are a male that you are here for the purposes that you state you are. So you're put through a lot more tests, a lot more fraud detection, a lot more bot detection. So there are certain things that we did on that side to make sure that these things happen. See, what happens with most networks, and given the anonymous nature of digital technology, is that all kinds of misuse starts happening. So at Shadi, we did a lot to try and weed that out. We also have a whole set of AI ML algos which actually flag certain types of behavior which is contrary to network effects. For example, let's say we find it extremely rare for a 50-year-old female to send out an interest to a 21-year-old male. This is a behavioral analytics that we kind of know is odd, and we therefore try and identify it, screen it, and correct it. Although it is allowed, we do keep our radar on these things.
So Pamit, I have a question there for you. I mean, when you walked us through the marketplaces and the network effects, I just want to understand how is the proportionality of marketplaces versus network effects. Is there a possibility that marketplaces can exist without network effects? If you can, share some thoughts on that.
Good question. See, marketplaces is not necessarily a digital term or an online phenomenon. Marketplaces existed before. Marketplace is just basically the fact that if you have a supermarket, that's a marketplace in the most basic form. But they don't have strong network effects. They tend to have weaker network effects. So there are going to be marketplaces with weak network effects. It also depends on what you define as marketplace, right? Because these are terms that do get sometimes used vaguely. Uh, like education setup. If you look at the education setup, there is virality to tech products, like for example, a Byju's, or even Adda 247 or these CAT prep exams and all of that. But there's no apart from the virality, there's no real inbuilt network effect. I think Byju's has kind of addressed that. They've started also bringing in hardware into the whole equation and all that. But there are businesses with weaker network effects which are still successful because of other reasons. So it's incorrect to say that network effects are necessary for marketplaces to succeed. Having said that, network effects, if you can figure out how to develop it within your product context, you are at a huge strategic advantage. So while you want it, it may not always be possible in your business. If that answers your question.
Yeah, that does pretty much answer my question. I'll take a pause here for 30 seconds or so, and I'll let the audience open up for questions if they have any. If they don't have, I have a couple of more in my kitty, to pull them out, also that we can share the uh, insights that you have more on marketplaces, because I want to make use of that. So I'll just give 30 seconds to the audience. So yeah, there are a couple of questions that we have. So, Pamit, this is for you. How do you ensure optimal supply-demand ratio and a marketplace? Thank you for that question.
So I'm a big believer in heuristics in product management. What I mean by heuristics is that you need to step back and take a very human call on what is good enough supply and what is good enough demand. For example, since we were discussing Shadi, uh, I don't think any female in the world would like to be called every day for the purpose of marriage, even though she's registered on Shadi. So if she starts getting called by men every day with proposals, it's excessive in terms of, let's call it, supply, right? So the human intuition is going to try and figure out, yeah, at least one a week is good. So if she's getting, for example, one proposal a week, that's keeping her sufficiently engaged on the platform and giving her sufficient chances of getting success through the platform. But at the same time, it's not harrowing her. So these are calls that you as product managers will need to make depending on the kind of product that you're offering. There are certain cases where supply can be unlimited. I mean, for example, if you want to purchase, let's say, a particular handset, who cares about how many people are willing to sell it to you? And each of them have different offers, different accessories attached, and all that. So in those cases, you don't really put a max cap to it. But in certain cases, you do want to. And that again, as a product manager, it's important to understand your consumer. I'm sure you hear this a lot. It's important to understand the week of a consumer. That's the way to think about it. So, ek hafte mein kitna, how much to give them in 1 week is one way of looking at it. Especially important for subscription businesses.
Right. That was. I hope that answered the question. Moving next, pretty much relevant to the current scenario first, and then definitely followed by we'll answer the other questions. So Pavit, this is specifically in terms of like women in product and tech, how is COVID impacting? And as a product leader, how are you bringing diversity? Even 50% of your customer needs to be female.
Oh, very good question. I'll come to the first part. How is COVID affecting? I think online marketplaces and digital economies will become more important, where social distancing is required. And I think social distancing is going to be the norm now, or maybe in the next year and a half. So as a business person, we have to start kind of thinking about how you can deliver your product remotely as much as possible. There are certain inherent advantages of being digital because of the fact that social distancing is going to be the norm, because you're obviously remote. In terms of how, the team and how work has been, at least my experience has been that it's been a lot more productive working from home. So tech velocity has gone up, a lot more items are getting shipped. It's been a little irritating though, because the meetings are scheduled back to back, and you have to literally jump from one meeting room to another. But I've observed that people have also become a lot more punctual about their meetings, a lot more agenda driven. So those things have happened. In terms of opportunities, not all categories will have opportunities. I heard, today Savita was sharing with me that the government of India is actually trying to figure out a way to get kirana stores to now, have their entire value chain online, right from farmers and manufacturers getting grocery to them, so their entire back-end supply chain onwards to delivering to the end consumer, which in part certain businesses like Basket and Grofers are already doing, but they're trying to figure out a couple of products there. So I think technology will have to be the answer to this particular contagion outbreak crisis. And to that extent, we are in a good place from a point of view of being able to help the world.
Thank you, Pamit, for that answer in the first part. But would you like to add anything in terms of, how will you, as a product leader, bring in 50% of, the diversity for your
Yes,
customer, especially when the need is to be female?
yes, that's a good question. The good news is that females have increasingly started moving into tech jobs. In fact, my generation, when we were in software engineering class, it was just about 10% female. But now, from what I now hear, some of my juniors, they're all 40% female. So, at a supply side itself, and at a social level, deeper social level itself, which means people, females opting for these kinds of vocational courses, software management, MBA courses, data sciences, AI, ML. This has started happening a lot, both in India and abroad. Incidentally, it's happening as much in India as in the Western countries. Um, and when I'm in the, I'm talking about urban India a lot more than rural, but it is happening a lot. So at the supply side itself, as a product leader, I try and keep it very competency based and merit based, which means that if whether it's a male or a female, whoever is likely better at the job will get the job. So on the recruitment side, while we would want diversity, we don't necessarily give you points for it, which is exactly what the females in the team prefer. A lot of females do the interviewing; they participate in the entire process. My team currently is about 45% female, so we're pretty much managing that currently. But it isn't through a particular recruitment strategy. It's more supply driven. And soon, I guess, female will be 60-40. That would be cool.
Thank you, Pamit. Adding to the right, competency is one of the key factor that you balance the diversity, and keeping in mind that whosoever performs and is doing good needs to move ahead in the career. That was a very well said example. So moving on to the next, this question is little interesting in terms of we are discussing a lot about network effects in terms of digital and virtuality in today's scenarios. but specifically this is on the physical end of a product, like how to build network effects in the physical products given the changing landscape. So what's your thought on that?
Oh, very difficult question. Given that I'm not a physical product expert, so Mukul Malik has asked me a tough one. But all right, I'll give it a shot. There are certain physical products that enjoy very good network effects. I'll give you the example of Mastercard and Visa. Wherever you go, if you're trying to use a card which is not a Mastercard or a Visa card, let's say you're using a Diner or an Amex, and I'm sorry to point this about Amex and Diner, but you will struggle because you don't have those POS machines available which accept those cards. So that's a physical product where there is an inbuilt network effect. Basically, everybody accepts either Master or Visa. And this is true for payment gateways as well. On the digital transaction side, I'm sure as there are a lot of product managers here who will be able to agree with me. There are few gateways that don't accept anything but Master and Visa. Now, while that is becoming more and more democratic and regularized, but it's a good example of a physical product where POS machines are not available. Harley Davidson is the question that he's asked, right? He's saying that how can you do it for a Harley Davidson? Now that we'll have to, you can still figure out, like, there are certain network effects that even as a brand you enjoy, but they're very weak. Like there's a cult around being a Harley Davidson biker. Now the fact that you want to be part of that cult is kind of a pull, but it's not really a network effect. It's a very very weak network effect, if at all you would want to use that term. I wouldn't use it.
Uh, all right. I mean, thank you for adding to that in terms of the physical product and the network effect of it. So there's one interesting question that I would like to take is like, how the existing players can overcome the fact that it says that monopoly wins, right? So how do the new entrants manage this network effect?
Right, that's a good question. So one way of doing it is to identify which part of your competitors, let's say there's this hegemonic giant, right? Now, if you're trying to take on Amazon, then best of luck, right? So I don't have the answer to how to take on Amazon, otherwise I would have been not on this call, I would have been somewhere else. But if you're trying to take on a slightly, smaller big player, let's call it that, there is likely that there'll be some part of the node that is weaker. Maybe he's getting lesser traffic. So you basically optimize on the SEO side and ensure that you outperform him on the traffic, and therefore, the seller side will improve. Maybe his seller side deliveries are not doing as well. It's kind of, again, I'll have to circle back to how Amazon has smartly done this. They've basically plugged every hole. I couldn't think of a single hole in their product model. For example, they've got fulfillment services on the traffic side to make sure that it auto scales. They've got AWS. They made AWS so good that they started selling it only to outside players. So depending upon which category you're trying to target, my suggestion would be you first look at doing a very deep competitor analysis after you've drawn your network diagram, and you ask yourself, because where is the competitor weakest? And if you can, kind of start chipping in on that particular weakness, you will, take away from his network and create a reverse momentum in your network. This has been done, by the way, in the past.
I like
I
that
would
answer.
I would have to give Shadi's example, but I don't want to do self flattery.
No, definitely, Pamas, we are coming to that. But before that, I definitely, indeed, it was good to know that chipping on the weaknesses of the competitor is one of the biggest area where you can thrive in, and you can win if you are the new entrant in the market. So connecting to the Shadi.com's example, so there's one question like how to engage community in a marketplace where people generally come from one-time transactions. See, for example, Shadi.com, 99acres.com. So your take on that?
Excellent question. I think uh, let's take Shadi's example. Uh, currently Shadi has decided to solve only one problem, which is discovery of partner. So, or basically introduction to a potential of your life partner, which is a big promise to make. But it is a single point solution. So you're basically just helping them find someone good enough for them to then explore, have a discussion with, and take it onwards from there. But you don't, as a product, you don't have to stop there. And depending on your funding and what kind of appetite, risk appetite you have as a product, you can go beyond that to ensuring that the consumer. So you do a kind of a vertical integration. So you say that, okay, I'll also provide you the wedding venue. Interestingly, when I was working there, I found that 60% of personal loans in India are taken for wedding. The purpose of the personal loan is wedding. So if you could, for example, actually go into fintech because you're shadi, that would have been an interesting play because you already know who's getting married within the next 6 to 12 month horizon. So vertical integration to enhance customer lifetime value is one way of thinking about it. You could also go the horizontal integration, which means you say that, okay, apart from matrimony, I could also do dating. So you enhance, value there. So it's not a single transaction product anymore, because the same person who used to come to you for dating, maybe for a lighter, friendlier, early stage kind of partner. Now that same person is coming to you for a permanent life partner. It's a difficult thing to do, but a horizontal integration is another way of thinking.
Right. I mean, I like the part wherein you brought in that, when you have one-time customers and how do you make them transition into multiple. So various integrations with that platform would be interesting aspect of it. The pretty good example that you gave was in terms of how Shadi.com, wherein you were working, you saw number of people taking loans only for marriage. So how fintech and the platform of Shadi can integrate together and become one unique platform. So that was a good insight to it. Moving on to the next one, Pamit, I have for you is, do you think current situation emerged new way of selling and buying?
Yes and no, both. uh, at the end of the day, users will continue to look for value and will be very, very price conscious, especially Indian consumers, also global consumers. So it won't change that reality. But we are in a place where we're going to have to figure out ways to deliver uh, a particular service or a product after having these constraints around us of social distancing. So that change is going to definitely happen. And from what I follow from the news, there are firms that are already, trying to redesign their product delivery. It's going to be very, very difficult for certain types of categories. Let's say, for example, media industry. It's going to be harder for them to figure out how they're going to deliver value. But on the entertainment side, it's very easy because everybody got more time. So, in fact, what I understand from friends in Prime Video is that their consumption has gone up by 150%. And subscriptions for Netflix have gone up in India by around 60-70%, maybe even no more by now. So that's also happening. So there are those kinds of changes happening because time and social distancing have become the norm, and I think they'll stay the norm for a while.
Yes, that's right, Pamit. I mean, just to add to it, you can differ on that. I guess even the buying and selling would, change in terms of the augmented reality as well, because that's going to play a huge role given the fact of the social distancing. And I get industries like, the sports industries like IPL and people who are fan of tennis and all, they can thrive a lot on the terms of buying and selling potential of AG, that is AR, that is augmented reality. Uh, is that correct, or I mean, how do you think about it?
I'm not a very big fan of augmented reality as yet.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried using it, and to be honest, like it may work in a few cases. So I'll give you an example: real estate transactions. I can't rent a flat based on augmented reality. Let's say a version of that flat. So I see the flat, and I decide, okay, fine, I liked it enough. But abhi social distancing chal raha hai, so I won't go and see the flat. I still have to go and see the flat. So it may work in certain categories, but I'm a lot more cynical than many people.
Sure. Just to check on time, or we are doing good on time. So I'll take the next question in terms of this is more on the career transitioning of it rather than the marketplace. So Pamit, how difficult is to transition from physical product marketing to digital and or reverse?
Oh, great question. Um, I have a junior in my team who's done this. She was working for a toy company, I think Mattel. Then she moved to Shadi as a product, and that was an interesting bet we took. I think the software industry tends to be a lot more, especially recruiters. They are a lot more specific about people from within software, and this is true across industries. So that challenge will stay. It's difficult to transition unless you have, let's say, a person that you know and he's willing to bet on you or he's worked with you in the past. So that transition is a little difficult, but the job itself is easy to transition. Working with software engineers initially can be a challenge for people who don't understand tech. But what I found is that 6 to 8 months, and you start getting a sense of how to write down your requirements, what are your primary use cases, and those things. Especially on the product side, I don't necessarily think it's a big challenge because when you're even when you're managing a financial product or a physical product, you are doing the same thing, except that you're not building it through software. So that culture shock. But I would caution against doing it at a later stage in your career because it may or may not work.
Sure, Pamit. I mean, that's a valid point and a good guiding principle that not to take the risk if you're at the, later stage of your career or, you're right in the beginning when you're learning. So on that note, with your experience that you have so far in the industry, there's a question in terms of, what are your views on building world-class product from emerging markets and what requires to get success in markets like India?
Okay, one thing with India, which is particularly true, is pricing. What I've increasingly found is that if you've priced it wrong, you have no chance, right? Because the Indian consumers seek out the best price. They are good at that. So if you want to succeed here, you have to figure that out. Um, Emerging markets in general, there are certain challenges around talent acquisition also. There are very few good product and tech people. And I say this with all due respect to our guys. I also say this with respect to the UX guys, right? So when you're setting up a product in India, it's very difficult to get good UX people nowadays. And without a good UX, especially for the Indian consumer, who tends to be, in need of a very intuitive product design, it's an interesting challenge. I do feel that products that figure out a way to go vernacular soon, which means you go into regional language consumption, that could be a good way to enter deeper into India. A lot of consumption in regional languages. I'm talking about regional scripts. Is it's failing. I think Paytm tried it, but I don't. From what I understand from the product team, they didn't entirely succeed in it. But that's also because of the way they implemented it.
Right. I guess so your vernacular angle was a click with the audience as well. And, in the audience also, we have people who think that vernacular angle is something that makes a lot of changes in India market, how you develop product in terms of
Yeah, see,
that.
the other challenge is that writing in Hindi is very difficult for us. We are so used to writing our product microcopy in English. Like, I asked a product manager, submit button को आप हिंदी में क्या बोलोगे? And forgive me, for using Hindi here, but I'm just saying that it's difficult. You can't come up with anything. We were trying to do it for Shadi, where we were confused about whether to call university Mahavidyalay or write it as university in Hindi script. These are very real challenges. So that's going to be a hard one.
Yeah, I guess those are some of the good call outs and the challenges that we face in the Indian market when we are developing a product, especially catering to the India sector. So I would agree with you on that. So I guess I have one question, but before that, let's see a few more questions that are here. So there's one question in terms of how the current players in the market, like Amazon, Flipkart, or any other, they're mostly online and they are already practicing no contact deliveries. But what will be the impact of social distancing on them, and what they should do to cope up with it?
On Amazon and Flipkart.
They are mostly online and they're practicing no contact deliveries. But are there any other measures that they should take to cope up with these changes in terms of the social distancing, in your opinion, or they are good?
Yeah, I mean, from what I understand, the one thing they're probably not doing right, especially Amazon, is the way they've been tasking their employee force. Social distancing is important for their employees also, and they've goofed up a little there. But of course, this is something that even for them is very new. So you have to take it with a pinch of salt. But I would assume that employee conditions is going to be paramount. Otherwise, on the consumer side of things, they are well placed because a lot of people will have to transact online. Even the ones who are not good at transacting online will move online. So to that extent, they are very well placed. They have fulfillment capabilities. They have the right supply network. So to that extent, they're very well placed.
Sure. So definitely, I guess with that said, they are well placed in the industry and they can cope up. That answers the attendees' question. We talked about marketplaces 1.0 and we talked about marketplace 2.0, differentiate further. So given the fact it's interesting to see, I wanted to understand where would marketplaces 3.0 would take us and what will be the impact of it on us?
Oh, you're asking me to now predict the future. I'll take a few guesses.
Sure.
Um I think the current revolution, uh, which was a smartphone revolution and a data let's call it a geo network driven Indian revolution. What it indicates to me is that there are two aspects to marketplaces as far as the consumer is concerned. One is access to data, which seems a solved problem, and the other is interface of data with computing systems. Now, the interface of data, because it became easier through smartphones, it kind of included a larger part of the economy, which we call the gig or the sharing economy. Right? My sense is that the next leg will be, if we can solve the interface problem even better. Now, currently, what you have to do is you have to, with your thumbs and fingers, you have to do an input into your app or your smartphone. So your bit rate is very, very slow. And the speed at which you interact with the connected world is highly limited by your physical motor skills. If, variables and something which the physical devices industry can come up with, which actually becomes all makes us kind of like a. Now I'm speaking futuristic shit, so forgive me for being a bit of a charlatan here. But if you can figure out cybernetics in a way that you don't really have to put in too much of efforts, your thoughts get translated into a search query. Uh, or a speech to text kind of a situation, you will find that all of a sudden everything is now being extended. All transactions are now happening through our extended, our cybernetic extensions, which is our smartphones. See, I look at the smartphone as a extra limb. It's an extra body part as far as I'm concerned. Now, right now, that extra body part has a very bad interface with my brain because the interface with my brain happens through my hand. If instead we can figure out a way for that to be solved, using some very cutting edge technology, which is actually happening in the West Coast. That would be a very interesting marketplace 3.0. It could be marketplace 4.0 maybe. Maybe it's still far away. But I don't see AI in the current form delivering this. Like AI and ML tends to be more about predictive right now. If it can actually solve these kinds of interface related problems, you are looking at a very different world then. All of us will be processing a lot more information per minute and getting a lot more things done just by thinking about it.
Right. I mean, definitely, Pamit. That was an interesting take on the, your mobile phone being the extra limb and how your physical brain connects to the cybernetic brain and how things will shape up in the future. Or with that said, I would like to take a pause here and, really appreciate your time and the webinar that you did for us on behalf of the entire AWIP community. I would like to thank you for sharing your knowledge on marketplaces and network effects with the audience and enlightening them with different scenarios in marketplaces. And so it was really I definitely take back with me some of the key factors such as Amazon flywheel. Then at the same time how we have to cope up with the changing reality and times and how do we leverage our product. And I like the fact of the challenges that you put forward for the Indian market in emerging terms, that how vernacular language is the king or can play a upside down or turn kind of thing. And for the new entrants, when you specifically mentioned, right, it's predominantly chipping in on the weakness of the competitors. That's pretty well the factor or the strength that we should play as product managers, that we should always capitalize on the weaknesses of the competitors and try to see how we can make our product in the market sustainable. So that's pretty much that I have to sum it up. But Pamit, if you have anything to add to it, feel free to add to it.
I totally enjoyed this, guys. I must say that I'm fairly, I've been receiving an echo right through this call. So forgive me for being very broken in my sentences. But it was an awesome conversation, and some of the questions really challenged me. And I just hope that I've, at least at a surface level, answered them.
Yes, Pamit, definitely you did justice to all the questions, I would say, from AWIP's end. And once again, thanks a lot. And folks who want to come connect with Pamit can find him on LinkedIn and connect with him and take this conversation further if you have any questions. Uh, Sorry, Pamit, I took that as in lieu from you instead of you telling.
Yes.
So I already told him. So definitely, but you can say a few words to them if you want to connect with them, how they can do so.
Yes, please feel free to connect with me via LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever it is.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for joining and have a rest of the good day.